Okay, and we're live. Welcome to, what are we calling this? The Cogent cast, Kartik? I keep forgetting. Send me a private chat. Kartik is our man behind the ones and twos down below. Welcome to the Cogent podcast. My name is Dr. Christopher Sloot, joined by Abigail Mogote. Oh, Cogent Conversations. That's right. We have to put that somewhere because my ADHD has already forgotten what the name of the podcast is. Welcome, Abigail. So Abigail and I get to hang out quite a bit. Probably, I would say the most out of anybody is I get to hang out with Abigail. And today we have a really fun topic we're going to be talking to you about. It's about just mentorship in general, but specifically challenges and the evolution of mentorship. So Abigail, I will always say this, in honor of National Mentorship Month, I'm so happy to have you, but I'm really bad at introducing people. I barely remember like who I am. So I'll remember something silly, be like, oh, Abigail likes to do spin class or whatever, but I'll like forget your title. So let me just let you introduce yourself to the team.
My name is Abigail Mogote, and I'm the Director of Admissions and Student Success with Cogent University. I landed in this spot. I have a tech background. I've been a consultant before, but one thing I kept experience over and over after I got out of the tech industry was people asking me for advice. I've been, asked several times why I don't start my own business in mentoring people through or coaching them through their life or their decisions. And so I feel like my position here at Cogent has really led me to combine both my tech background and my soft skills to help mentor our students from the beginning of their start of their career.
Love that. And so I think it's really fitting that you and I are hanging out here for National Mentorship Month. I'll tell you a bit about myself. And I met Abigail. It's been about 15, 16 months I've been with Cogent now. And I would say, we have a unique opportunity to hang out with our students, our young graduates, and kind of mentor them a little bit. I don't know if you'd agree, but I think mentorship for me is not just a one-way street. Like I enjoy mentorship. And I'm sure when people ask you for advice, you kind of feel that great sense of pride. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking from experience or seeing others' experience and sharing it with new students and alumni is just a great way to help them grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll introduce myself. So I'm Dr. Christopher Sloot. I'm the Director of Employer Relations here. Together with Abigail Mogote, we really try to spearhead a lot of the career advisement and career development of our young graduates. If you haven't heard of Cogent University before, that's okay because we're pretty small, but we're growing. Cogent University, it's kind of a one-stop shop for folks who have already earned their four-year degree and are looking for kind of the next step in their career with some applied skills. So a little bit about me. Before I got to Cogent, I was a lifelong academic for about, 15 or so years, got my master's, bachelor's, and PhD. Was also an assistant dean and dean for about 12 years. But prior to that, I was in assessment, talent acquisition, and training and development. So just a lot of human stuff, like all the human stuff. As opposed to Abigail, who has the human stuff like I do, but had that incredible biotech background that I wish I had. I wish I had like a technical skill like you did. Do you find that you get to complement both together, Abigail?
I think so. I graduated with a biomedical and chemical engineering degree from University of Southern California. And while I didn't use my actual degree because I had intended to go to medical school, I was recruited into the software industry. And so I was a consultant for Seagate Software and SAP straight out of college, and I did that for 3 years. But a big chunk of that time, I actually became a trainer. And so that's where I found the love of always talking to people and helping people learn, as opposed to working behind the scenes behind a computer all the time. And so after that, becoming a mom and finding myself in multiple leadership positions on PTA and on charity boards, that's kind of where I found my niche, where, even though I have the ability to program and I have the ability to do all sorts of engineering things, my love is really for people.
Awesome. We love that. And while you were explaining everything about yourself, I was looking up the National Mentoring Month founders. I didn't realize this as I was looking up. So what is National Mentoring Month, right? And who founded it? So National Mentor Month was founded about in hold on, 2002, so 21 years ago, by a group called Mentor. Now, Mentor has been around for about 33 plus years. They're a 501c3, they're a nonprofit, and the month of January is kind of just meant to just kind of support the idea of mentorship. So it was launched in 2002. The campaign aims to unify and expand the mentoring movement. Supporters and participants of National Mentoring Month include prominent nonprofit organizations, elected officials from local, state, and federal level, and several U.S. presidents and their administration. So it's a nationally recognized month. So I want to take the time to really to hang out and appreciate National Mentor Month. So with that, I think we could probably jump into some questions. So, I'm sure we can define mentorship, and I've Googled several definitions and kind of looked through what I feel mentorship would be. But Abigail, how would you define mentorship?
It's, it's a broad definition in a sense. It's somebody I feel can bring practical knowledge from their experience or others' experience, and helping someone increase their confidence personally and professionally, so that they see opportunities that come their way and they know that the qualities they have can contribute to any organization that they join. And so I feel like a mentor can help help people see that in themselves, see what they have and what they can contribute.
Absolutely. And I think the number one thing that you had mentioned is such a broad definition, right? So I believe the mentorship should come from a genuine, true, genuine place, which is why, to be honest, and Kartik, I hope you don't kill me, I thought about changing into a suit today. And I was like, you know what? No, this is how I work. I tend to work in more casual clothes, and I'm representing one of my universities. So may as well kind of, dress in that attire. So I find there's a lot of different definitions for mentorship, but my favorite definition is very simple: the guidance provided by a mentor, especially an experienced person in a company or educational institution. So mentorships come in all places, shapes, and forms, right? You can find them at your college, you could find them in high school, you could find them in any other educational institution, you could find them at your job, or, what's even better sometimes is finding someone that's not in your job that could be a colleague elsewhere, right? So we're both in the same field, but you've been places where I want to go. One of my favorite phrases is, success isn't taught, it is caught. So typically what I tell students and young professionals of all ages, right? Find somebody who's been where you want to be. Don't try not to be mentored by somebody who's not more successful than you, right? You want to find somebody who's done what you want to do before and can help you kind of get to where you need to go. So I would imagine same thing with you, Abigail. When people are asking you for that advice, they're like, okay, this person's done some stuff. Let me try to figure out how I can get to where she wants to go. So one question that I had as I was kind of just thinking about mentorship, and I think we're in a weird, I don't want to say weird, we're in a unique place in our society. I think the COVID pandemic, while we're working at home, has really shed light on the idea that we've got a lot of cross-generational folks in the workplace right now. And one question that I have for you, Abigail, and you see this every day, all day, is can you talk to me about different mentorship styles that work and do not work, especially with regard to the generations, different generations being mentored by folks who may be a little bit older than them?
Yeah, it's so important to find the right mentor-mentee pair in order to be successful. Sometimes people click and sometimes they don't. And so that's where it's really hard. And I think that, finding that match so that your skill traits match and that, each other can help. It matters what the professional experience is, the career goals, the personal interests, in order to find that correct pairing. And sometimes it takes a few meetings and talking first to see if there's that click, right? I think we both experience that with the students, right? Where we'll talk to a student and you might click with one more than I click with the other, or vice versa. And so a lot of times it just depends if they empathize, I think, with where you've been and what you can provide.
Yeah, it's so funny. One of the things that kills me when I talk about how I'm currently mentoring folks is I remember thinking as a young person, like, this person's talking about stuff that is just so irrelevant. They think they know everything, and they're speaking about stuff that, they're so old time, they're so old school, right? So I think about two things. One is I was a fool, right? Because at 22 years old or 20 years old, I had so much to learn from people who were, nearly 20 years my senior. But number two is I really hate the fact that I don't, I haven't experienced those things so recently, right? I wish I could go back as a 20-something-year-old person and experience those things so I could see what the challenges are. Is it really different? Is it similar? One thing, I was helping to mentor a friend of mine, and he asked me to look through his resume and a personal statement because he's trying to get into a grad school. And I said to him, listen, I'm going to be hard on you. This is not going to be fun. I'm going to go through and I'm going to rip your resume apart, right? So that's something that I'm always very, very serious about. The other thing that I'll do, I even did this for my partner, is I'm going to treat you like a life coaching client, right? Because I career and life coach. So if you're asking me for mentorship, I'm going to be very stern and firm with you. That works for a lot of people, but I think that I find, and I hate to stereotype, but as we get into Gen Z, they're really not going to respond that positively to those kind of firm holds. Would you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's harder for certain generations to accept advice, right? Or listen to what other generations have experienced because they think that, well, this time it's different. But really, I know, like being older than you, is that a lot of these things just recycle. And like kids these days, and I say kids, lightly, that think that we haven't gone through that, just like fashion, right? They dress up a certain way and think that they invented it, but we wore that in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s. So everything's recycled. And I don't think that they realize that until they become the older generation and realize, oh, okay, they knew what they were talking about.
Absolutely. And it's funny too, is there's what the video was, where somebody comes out with a new song. It was just recent. They came out with a new song, and the Gen Z person was like, "Oh man, this song slaps! What a great song!" But it was like the fifth version of that song that had started in like the 70s and had been sampled and redone. So it was very funny. So I think to your point, right? Even though, look, I didn't grow up with an iPad in my hand. I just didn't, right? And I didn't grow up. I knock on wood, and I don't want to trigger anybody, but I didn't grow up with like school violence in the way that other folks have grown up with school violence. So I can't speak to those things. I can to what it's like to grow up and transition and have fears and feel unsafe in a certain environment, right? So these are things that I think are valuable. And Megan, we see your comment. We're going to make sure to put that up in just a second. I want to make sure that I get this kind of transitional question on, which is, as we're kind of talking about these different types and contexts of mentorship, can you tell me a bit about what's worked for you? What are some successes you've had, Abigail, and what are some challenges that you faced in the mentorship space?
I see some challenges tend to be pushback. People ask me for advice, or we talk about what they can do or change to achieve their goals, and then they already have an answer for why that won't work without trying it. Right. So that's probably my biggest challenge. The biggest success really is when they achieve their goals. When they say, this is what I'm hoping to achieve. And then we go through the process of, practicing certain soft skills, for instance, and they get through it. I remember there was somebody that I worked with that could not do Zoom calls, and she cried, but you wouldn't know that she was crying. You could just see the tears in the Zoom call, but her voice was very calm. But by the end of, mentoring her through, talking about who she was and what she represented in her goals, she got over that and she became so confident. And, that in itself makes me really happy to be part of this program.
I love that. So I want to jump actually, before I jump into Megan's question, I'll give you some of my successes and failures. I think the number one thing that I have a challenge with is, and I hate to say it this way, it's like you can see a clear path for a mentee as a mentor, and they don't take that path, right? So they do something that's alternative to what you've suggested. And to watch that person kind of struggle when you know that there's a clear answer that you can see clearly. And sometimes that's not even a mentorship thing. That could just be stepping back from a problem thing. You could probably see that in your friends and your relatives and coworkers that are on your level as well. But sometimes people are too close to the problem. So, having a mentor, in my opinion, is one of the greatest things that that I've experienced. I remember I was super excited to get a job a while back. And I told a mentor of mine, I was like, hey, I've got this great, this great job. And I was pretty excited about the salary. And it was like maybe a $20,000 jump from what I was making. He felt, and he was right, that I should be making like $100,000 more than what I was making. And he's like, okay, this is a great role for you, but when are you going to start making some money? And I was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. This is something that I really need to consider. So I think sometimes our mentors see in us something that we don't necessarily see. So let's jump into Megan's question. And this we have a couple of our pre-scripted questions as well that go along with this. And we'll kind of let the conversation flow. So Megan asks, what advice would you give to someone who might get assigned a workplace mentor or supervisor that doesn't feel like a good fit for them? And the interesting thing is some of our questions that we've been wanting to build this conversation around are informal versus formal mentorship. So let's go into that. First of all, let's jump into the idea of formal versus informal mentorship. If you're in an educational institution or a workplace environment, you might be getting involved with a mentorship program versus finding a mentor naturally. Can you speak to both of those? What are some of the pros and cons that you feel, Abigail?
So I would say that that you'll never get along with everybody, right? So I always tell people that they have to learn how to adapt to their environment. So you may not have a great relationship or click with someone that you were assigned as a mentor in a workplace, but I think that you can learn a lot from people that you don't necessarily click with, just like you can learn a lot from someone that you do click with. So I always try to tell people to take advantage of what they can learn and from people that they don't really feel like is a great fit, because everybody has something to bring to the plate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to bring it back to Megan's question in a second. I wanted to make sure that everyone saw that question. I think that is truly it's a multi-leveled and very complex question, right? It's like, first of all, let's talk about formal versus informal mentorship, and then let's talk about mismentorship or mismatches. So, studies will show you, well, the studies vary, but the studies that I've read, so maybe I'm biased, will show you that an informal mentor is going to last longer, going to stick a lot further than a formal mentorship program for a number of reasons. Number one is the formal mentor sometimes feels like it's work or it's part of your workspace or part of your educational institution. So it seems institutionalized and formal, right? And we all know that as human beings, we're rebellious, right? We want to do something that's a little bit unique, something that's not necessarily the norm. That's number one. Number two, it's that question of fit, right? So I sign up for a mentorship program, somebody else signs up for a mentorship program, and we're going to try to find realistically if we could find the right fit. Well, there's X amount of people in the organization. Now, X minus the amount of people who don't sign up for that mentorship program, right? That's the pool. That's the end size that you have. Here's the issue with that. I could be a perfectly suitable mentor for someone, but may not be interested in signing up for a formal mentorship program. And I may not even consider what I'm doing mentorship. Or maybe I wasn't considering mentoring someone and just found the person who totally fits me, right? So fit becomes a huge issue with formal mentorship programs. The other issue I think that we find is when you find someone organically, right, that person could leave the organization, move to a different organization, move to a different department. Because you found them organically, you still feel connected to them, versus the idea that I found this person at work. If they leave the organization or switch departments, I don't know if my connection is going to be as strong. Now, the pros with regard to formal mentorship, right, especially with regard to relocation or entry-level folks who may not have that kind of guidance, is it provides a structure for folks who can truly, truly take the time and kind of soak in all the good from that formal mentor. What would you anything to add on formal versus informal, Abigail?
Not really. I think you covered it.
Awesome. So jumping into this question, which I think is a valuable one, right? What advice would you give to someone who might be assigned a workplace mentor or supervisor that doesn't feel like a good fit for them? Now, I'm gonna separate this, right? Because if they're a supervisor, you really have nothing to say about it, right? So, you either leave the organization or figure out how to work with the supervisor. Now, if the supervisor is inept, right, or if the supervisor is in some way, shape, or form offensive, insulting, has some cultural biases, whatever, you can, of course, go through the formal process of filing something with HR and hope that you work for an organization that has true integrity and that will be heard and that, something will be done about that supervisor. If not, might be time to find a new organization or while you're there, figure out how you can cope with that person. But with regard to a formal mentor who may not be the right fit, Abigail, I know you mentioned, just trying to soak up the good. What other things would you do in that situation?
I would probably, I think the other party would also know that it's not a good fit
Right.
Eventually, right? So I would try to take the lead eventually and just say, hey, can we sit down and talk about our expectations and our goals, in this relationship so that maybe you can work something out. Because sometimes in the beginning, somebody just doesn't leave a great impression and you automatically think negatively about that mentor and what they bring to the table and what they can help you with. But other times, there really is something there. There's a reason why they were assigned, to you as a mentor. And so I think that if you can sit down as two adults to speak about certain expectations and things that, are not working and working, then you might be able to overcome the challenge where you don't really click.
1000% agree. And the other thing that I might add to that is that I would say, I've had formal mentors and or supervisors, because sometimes they're one and the same, right, who are completely different from me. So Abigail, you'll probably know this about me just from working with me. I'm an extrovert's extrovert, right? Give me something to sell, give me something to go to market with, give me someone to talk to, give me a relationship to build. I'm there. I had a mentor once at a university, and he was the complete opposite of me, and he knew it. And he said to me, and he was a supervisor, and he said to me, look, there's two types of people at a party. He said the first person's out in front, passing the champagne around, making sure everyone's having a good time, making sure that the conversation is flowing. The other person is in the back of the kitchen, making sure that every single little cocktail pig in a blanket, little cocktail weenie, is cut precisely to shape so that it goes out perfectly. He said, I'm the cocktail weenie cut guy. I'm the guy who's making sure that everything's accurate. You're definitely the guy that makes sure that everything is flowing. What I learned from that relationship, though, and it was a fairly long relationship, what I learned from that relationship, though, was how to be more operationally sound, because there are going to be certain parts of my job where I just can't talk all the time. I've got to fill out a spreadsheet. I've got to put in a job requisition for our candidates. I've got to plan a lesson for something that we're teaching. I've got to do the execution work for an event that we're putting together. So I think the other part of that conversation is, yes, have clear expectations, and also be open to the idea that somebody could be mentoring you on something that you know nothing about. So be open and flexible to learning those things, I think, is super valuable. And I think that, Abigail, you and I have that when we mentor some of our students who are very different from us.
Yes, definitely. And a lot of times young people think they know everything, right? Like
Right.
the teenager or the middle schooler that says, yeah, I know mom, right? Or I know dad, or but in reality, they really don't, and we know better. So mentors are there to help you, whether, they're older than you or younger than you. And so, but, they come with experience. Mentors are there to help. And so, if we can just have an open mind, an open heart to the help and the guidance and the experience, that I think that, it would be more well received.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a bit about kind of the evolution of mentorship, Abigail, and specifically, combining two of the prescriptive questions that we kind of gone off of, the evolution of mentorship, as well as the part in which technology plays in mentorship. And I think that's super important, especially to discuss while we're in this kind of post-COVID world of virtual workspaces. Although I will say a lot of the employers that I'm now speaking with are going gung-ho and trying to use their space. I think it's because they probably have 10-year leases that they don't want to lose money on. But let's talk a bit about the evolution of mentorship. How have you seen mentorship change over the past, I don't know, let's say 10 years, we'll keep it relevant.
I'd say that it's been an industry in a sense that's growing. I'm finding that some people are actually leaving the corporate world in whatever job that they have to become actually just a mentor, because of the things that they've learned in corporate. And, there's a lot of young people today that are unsure about their future and how much money they should be making and what they're going to do with themselves and should they move or should they stay, right? And I think that the evolution of mentorship has come to a point where people like us, that has been there, done that, we can say, you know what, you're young. It's okay to move. You don't need to stay put in this state because your family is there. Your family will always be there. An opportunity might arise in another state that you may not get that opportunity again. And now's the time to take advantage of that before a family, before you get married, any of those things, those constraints that may prevent you from moving when you're older.
Yeah. It's so funny as you say that. I remember so many people saying that to me, like, these are the things that you should be doing as a young person. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. God, I wish I took some of that advice. And now I try and you hear me do it. I try so hard to like shake the people that I mentor. And I'm like, listen, you got to listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. One of the things being moving away from home. I lived around New York City for my entire life. And while I loved it there, the amount of money that you need to make to necessitate a pretty decent life is a lot of money. Now moving to Las Vegas, and now even Las Vegas is changing a little bit. I could probably move elsewhere, but moving away from that metro area has taught me that not only could I create a much better lifestyle for myself, but I should have done it 10 years ago. And so you start to see, and I hear about things that my dad has said to me or other folks in other organizations have said to me. And I think to myself, man, you really thought you knew what the heck you were talking about. And you really, it's, unfortunately, you don't know until you don't know. And a lot of folks, I think, whether it's Gen X, Millennial, Gen Z, Boomer, whatever, you need to live it. You need to live it, and then you're going to go, I totally get it. So I think mentorship is, sometimes it's very fulfilling, and sometimes it's super frustrating. So like, I wish this person would just get it. The other thing that I'd like to say, I think about kind of the evolution, and let's talk about tech in a second. I don't know if we didn't really put it in our script, but let's talk a bit about reverse mentorship, right? So there are a lot of reverse mentorship programs in which somebody who's a little bit more experienced in an organization and has some wisdom can impart on somebody who's new to the organization. And let's call it what it is, younger in the organization. That young person can in turn tell the more experienced, wise person a bit about the technology they're using and that type of stuff. There was a very funny meme. I should have pulled it up, but all the people in this organization, this person put it on Instagram, all the people in this organization were messaging this very young person, this Gen Zer, and going, okay, can I say that the meeting was lit? Am I allowed to say the meeting was lit? And they were like, well, tell me what the meeting was. And they were like, well, the meeting was very enthusiastic. Okay, you don't want to say that the meeting was lit. You say, I'm finna be excited about this meeting, right? And that was like the thing. And then the young person would ask the older folks and say something like, how do I tell somebody I want to punch them in the face? And they were like, oh, the way you would say that is, as formally requested, blah, blah, blah. Like, here's how you get your frustration out in a professional way. Obviously, it's a joke, and I'm sure, I don't know if those conversations happen, but we don't want to say those things in the workplace. But it was very funny to see that interaction. So can you talk to me a bit about, do you have experience with reverse mentorship, people using tech to mentor those that are more experienced?
I can't think of a situation off the top of my head, really. I know that, like, the younger generation has been able to say, look, I've done this in college, or I learned this through a project. And when I think back to when I was in college, which was years and years ago, it was the same thing. So nothing has really changed as far as the education that they receive from universities, which is really why Cogent University exists, right? And so that was my own experience. And so I know that the younger generation can mentor us in, hey, this is what's up and coming, and this is what everybody's doing, just like being on social media, right? They may know all sorts of things about putting their projects on GitHub or being on LinkedIn as soon as they're in college. Those are things that I didn't know to do back then.
Yeah.
And even though I'm on LinkedIn now, I'm not necessarily active on LinkedIn, and I probably should be more active because you know what? Our younger students are. And so, yeah, it's we can definitely learn. Us older generation, we can definitely learn from the younger ones as well. It's whether, again, same thing, being open, having an open mind and open heart to accepting that help and knowing that, you know what, I might be a little bit behind in tech.
Right. And it's funny too, as somebody who considers, like, I'm a techie, right? I mean, I was that person. I was definitely the person educating everyone on the right technology. And I throw technologies out there, and my younger colleagues are like, no, we don't use that anymore. I'm like, well, what do you use? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't realize that Facebook wasn't cool until a few years ago. I was like, yeah, Facebook. Everyone is on Facebook. They're like, yeah, your mom's on Facebook. I was like, yeah, so like that's not cool. I always want to keep in touch with my mom. So let's talk a bit about technology with regard to COVID and the pandemic.
Mhm.
So how do you feel, if at all, technology has played a role in formal and informal mentorship, specifically with regard to the fact that we just don't meet in person as much as we used to?
Yeah, I think that it has played a huge role since COVID. We everyone, all these businesses had to learn how to pivot and how to make their business succeed through COVID, right? So we all switched from doing things on Zoom. My daughter is a competitive dancer, and all her classes were Zoom. And I thought, these teachers aren't even correcting her form. But she was still being active, and still they were using cues and words to just like remind them, what to do with their toes or their position. And so I think that technology like Zoom has really helped us, stay connected through COVID and even after COVID, because I think a lot of businesses found also that staying connected through things like Zoom has helped us grow in other ways and be able to be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find myself going, because we do a lot of Zoom calls on the sales team, right? And I think to
Mhm.
myself, does anybody just not have a phone call anymore? Like, sales used to be on the phone, right? But I will say this, in having a specific time frame to speak to someone and then getting on a Zoom call, you get to understand a lot about them. You can see if they don't have a virtual background, you can see it's snowing outside or it's sunny outside. You go, oh, where are you calling? Oh, you're calling from Colorado today. Oh, that's really cool. Or you might see a picture of their family, or you might see there was somebody who had like MMA equipment behind them, and I fight MMA when my body's working properly. It's been a little bit off this year, but we talked about MMA for a little bit. So these are things that are really exciting, and I think that even though we're not seeing each other as in person as we used to, I think that this allows us to connect with a lot more people. One technology that I love, I think, is called the Lunch Club. I think Lunch Club. Let me Google it real quick. Yes. Um, yeah, Lunch Club is an AI superconnector that makes introductions for one-to-one meetings to advance your career. So it's like you get to meet with these like really cool folks one-on-one. And I try to do one like once every other week, although sometimes I skip and I'm probably in danger of like getting my Lunch Club membership card revoked. But you can meet with people who you can sell to, they can sell to you, they could be mentored by, you could just kind of interact with folks. And think about it this way, as I've been thinking about it too, is sitting in one place, even if it's in your office, in your home office, right? Or an office that we have as a business. Being able to connect with people via Zoom means that I can go from meeting to meeting without having to leave my office, right? So I can have 2 or 3 mentors in 6 different locations where I wouldn't have them before, and they can continue to mentor me from across the country. So I think that's really valuable,
Yes.
for sure.
I think, it's been able to connect us in a more personal way, actually, because talking this way versus on the phone, you can see facial expressions and body language, things that you can't do over the phone. And so sometimes I meet with somebody, and after we hang up, I'll send an email follow up because I have this feeling from certain facial expressions or certain gestures that they've done, that something was a little bit off in the meeting. So I think that it's helpful in so many ways to meet this way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So let's talk a bit about the impact of mentorship. So, I think we know the answer, but let's flesh through it, right? So you've got two different folks in an organization. One has a mentor and one does not. What's the impact of mentorship on someone's career in all the ways, shapes, and forms?
Oh gosh, I can't think of a negative impact,
Right.
right? I think anybody that can provide you with some sort of insight of their experience or what they see you doing or not doing, can be very beneficial to you personally and professionally.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing, but what I would also add is I think that what a mentor might do might seem as though they're slowing you down immediately, right? Because, I look at a lot of folks who weren't mentored properly and they tried to accelerate their career really quickly. And they might have gone to 2 or 3 organizations in 4 or 5 years. And they seem to be moving up the ladder very quickly. But what you'll find is with the proper guidance and kind of staying in one place for a little bit, you might find yourself with the proper mentorship moving up a lot faster later on in your career.
Mhm.
Furthermore, having the right mentor who truly believes in you and is in your field could do, I mean, tenfold what not having a mentor could. I know folks both in my field and not in my field who have been mentored by folks in their organization who then leave an organization and say, "Oh no, I'm not going anywhere without Abigail. I'm not going anywhere without Christopher." And they bring that person onto their team and both accelerate their career by 1 or 2 rungs, which is because they knew they were capable, and also potentially gotten them a $20,000 to $50,000 raise because they knew that person was undervalued at that organization. So I think that having a mentor both helps you to slow yourself down, but in the longer term can really speed your career up and provide you with someone who truly believes and understands your skill set and put you in the right position to be successful.
100% agree.
Awesome. So let's talk a bit about when we look at the results of mentorship. What do you hope that a potential mentor mentee relationship looks like?
So, like, one of the first things that I always talk to people about is like prioritizing their goals, right? So, if we know what their goals are in the very beginning, success to me looks like, did we reach our goals? What are we doing to reach those goals? And if they're met, then I know that the mentorship relationship was successful in one way
Mhm.
or another.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and whatever those goals are. And here's the funny part is, right? Sometimes you see and hear goals that were not part of your original game plan, and you end up achieving those as well. And sometimes you may have a goal that wasn't the right goal when you find a mentor. So, for example, you may go into a mentorship relationship and go, "I need to double my salary in the next 2 years." Okay, that may not be the goal that you should have been looking for, and no mentor is going to really do that for you. But perhaps throughout those 2 years, you increase your salary, by whatever you wanted to increase your salary by, but also found the joy in your job or found enjoyment through the process of that acceleration or moving up that ladder, or whatever it is. So I think it's really important to be open to whatever success may come from that mentor. So I think as we're starting to wrap up a little bit, I always try to conclude all of our podcasts with like a lesson learned. It's probably the professor in me. So what can we give? What kind of advice can we give to a mentor or a mentee? You can pick one or do both during National Mentor Month to help us, find the right fit.
Oh gosh, advice. Um,
Be a mentor.
yes, be a mentor. Help young people, right? I would say, seek them out, and I try to follow some people first, and just see like if they inspire me as a person, and I may reach out to them, as a potential mentor. Because what I always feel like is a mentor should, you know basically upgrade your existing skills and help you figure out who you are, so that you can reach your goals that you've identified and prioritized.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And something that you said that was really valuable, I think, is to follow someone first. And I don't know if you meant follow them on like social media or just follow them around physically, but but either way, I still tend to agree, right? Look at a potential mentor's activity. Look at what they prioritize. Look at what they do while they are not with you, because that's going to help you understand what their integrity is like, what they value, all the things that are going to help you kind of choose that potential mentor. Now, I have my book here somewhere, and I need to put it on my desk. But a lot of that is mentioned in the college admission, so we find a lot of folks who can help guide you, and even through their mistakes, right? We want to look at a mentor's mistakes and see what they've done wrong, so that we don't make those mistakes or make them in a different way. But I think the lesson that we're learning here is that when you find a mentor, whether naturally or unnaturally in some sort of formal process, I think what we've both learned and what we've both tried to educate folks during this podcast is mentorship is a great just wealth of understanding and wisdom that you truly don't understand how valuable it was until you've gone through it. So I think in honor of National Mentorship Month, if you're watching this podcast, whether it's live or you're watching it later, if you're in a position to mentor someone, pick up someone to mentor. And obviously it doesn't happen overnight, but if you're in a position to learn something, find somebody who's been where you want to be and ask them if they can teach you a little something. Because like Abigail says, there are so many things in this life and in this professional space, regardless of our adeptness in technology, that are cyclical. And so to avoid the mistakes of the past, we have to kind of learn from the folks who have been there. So with that, I'm going to thank you so much, Abigail. Do you have any other closing thoughts to add to our coaching conversation?
No, just know that a mentor is someone that, sees more in you and, your talent, your abilities. And that's what you need to see in yourself. And so mentors can help with that. So I just encourage everybody to try to find that. There's somebody out there for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So with Coaching Conversations, I'm Dr. Christopher Salute. This is Abigail Mogote. You are watching Coaching Conversations, sponsored by Cogent University. We want to thank everybody who watched live, and thank you if you're not watching live. And we want to ask you too, if you are watching this later, feel free to shoot us a comment, or if you want to be on one of our podcasts or you have an idea for a podcast, shoot us a note. We want to hear all about it. So thank you so much, Abigail, for coming on, and thank you for honoring National Mentorship Month with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a good one, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.